So what point in history do we have both astronomy and trains coming together? Well, that point in time is the Central Railroad of New Jersey's Blue Comet. And I'm standing on the observation deck of one of the cars, the Biela, that came out of that consist. Hi, this is Trevor from History on the Move, and I'm on location here in Clinton, New Jersey. I'm going to be telling you a little bit more about this car. Now, we're going to be contending with some road noise because this is on a main thoroughfare, but we'll do the best we can. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite cup of coffee or tea or juice or whatever the heck you're drinking these days, and enjoy this episode. So, as I said in the intro, you're going to have to contend with a little bit of road noise here. Okay, a lot of road noise. That's Route 78 behind me. Major thoroughfare if you're in Jersey. So let's keep going here with a little bit of history. So the year is 1928. And what's going on in America? People have money, cash is flowing. Alcohol is not, well, unless you go to a speakeasy. But you have, people are, it's post-World War I, and people are out and spending money in the economy. But again, prohibition is going on. But we're not quite yet to the Great Depression. That's going to come in a few seconds, but in a few months if we're in a timeline here. So the year is October 1928, and the president of the Central Railroad of New Jersey, a man by the name of R.B. White, has this idea. And he says, I'd like a train to run between Jersey City and Atlantic City that's going to be a deluxe all-coach train. And all the cars are going to be named after celestial comets to keep with this theme of, well, the train's name is going to be called the Blue Comet. And, there was going to be almost, everything was going to be based upon these comets and these beautiful colors. But it's a twofold thing here. So the colors of the car were a deep royal blue, almost like a Packard blue, and a cream band that would run around these cars. And why is that? Well, so you have a mix of two things going on here. You have the astronomy theme going on in the interior, the blue comets and the comet names of the cars, and even, some of the inside of the dining car, the transoms over the windows were plated, if you will, embedded with pictures of moons and stars and all that good stuff. But the colors were to represent, the royal blue represent the beautiful Atlantic Ocean blue that was to come in to meet you at Atlantic City, and the cream would represent the sand that you would sink your toes in when you got to Atlantic City. So again, so with that in mind, and also keeping in mind that blue is the common theme here. When you went inside, if you were to ride in the Biela, the porter's uniforms, the linen on the table, the wicker chairs you would sit in would all be in that beautiful royal blue, keeping with the blue motif. And speaking of blue motifs, if you were riding this car back in 1929, you would also have on the head end one of three G3 Pacifics 462s that famously, everybody knows the Alesco feed water heaters you see on the front of those things. Numbers 831, 832, and 833. And these were actually pretty, standard stuff from Baldwin Locomotive Works, but they were capable of 100 miles per hour. And they were painted in that beautiful royal blue with gold lettering to accent it. The coaches inside, if you were to ride in these deluxe coaches, you would have plush style bucket seats with fold down armrests. Pretty good, pretty nice seating for an all coach train. And again, if you were to go inside Biela back in 1929, the car behind me, you would see that this thing had 48, count them, 48 silver and blue wicker chairs that you would be able to sit in, relax, and look out the windows as the Jersey countryside and cities went by. They also had beautiful walnut panels paneling inside with gold inlays in there, and the carpeting was the same color as the exterior, that Packard blue or royal blue, whatever color whatever your eye perceives it as. Now, the sad part here is this train did really well when it debuted in February of 1929, but as soon as that Great Depression hit, the first year of it was about the highlight. That was the best they were going to do in terms of profiting, and then it began to kind of slowly fall off. And yeah, you could blame mostly the Great Depression for that, but you could also say at that same time that automobiles in America are on the rise. The byways are going by, the streets are becoming more now, roads are becoming paved, and you're seeing a lot more thoroughfare in terms of the automobile. That's gaining more traction. And neat little tidbit here is, so 1929 is about the highlight of when you were going to ride this train and see it in its, in its best form. And again, like I said, it falls off until it gets to September 28th is the last day of 1941, when unfortunately the drumhead would come off the observation car of the train, and it is no more. It is no more. Fun little fact though, during the train's lifetime, there were multiple steam locomotives that pulled this thing on the head end. Not just those 3 G3 Pacifics we talked about. Actually, fun fact, if you go down to the B&O Railroad Museum in Baltimore, you can see one of those, the 592. Yes, CNJ 592 in the roundhouse actually pulled the Blue Comet at some point in time. There's photographic evidence of that. So pretty neat, and you should definitely go visit the museum to see that. But the Biela behind me was actually involved in a rather, we'll call it an unorthodox crash in 1939. So why don't we change gears here? Let's talk about that.
Coming all shapes and sizes, feeling mighty good, fell into the abyss. Put it in, set it up, check it and let my mind shift. Strumming in love and music I trust. Well, I show it to the people who know it. Did you get the message?
So what is the Biela that's behind me claim to fame? Well, other than the fact that it was in the Blue Comet consist, it was in the consist of a Blue Comet train set that happened to derail. Pretty significant derailment as well. So, it's Saturday, August 19th, 1939. And the Blue Comet consist for that particular day had a combine, 2 coaches, the diner, and the car behind me, the Biela. And the locomotive was actually not one of those G3 Pacifics, but it was number 820. Just an ordinary Pacific for the Central Railroad of New Jersey. And in this case, it was heading east. And the day prior and the day of, it was just torrentially downpouring. I believe, forecasts vary for that day, but most of what I read said it was 13, they estimate to be 13.5 inches worth of rain. And that can ultimately lead to what's termed a washout, right? So the roadbed underneath the track can literally just be wiped away by just torrential rain and just water that's moving at such a high velocity that just literally wipes out the roadbed, and the tracks are just kind of hanging out. Well, tracks need support. So if you don't have a roadbed, you have some teeter-tottering tracks. And there's also, unfortunately, because the storm's rolling through on that Saturday, there's very poor visibility. So as the Blue Comet is heading east, the train normally did a top speed of 70 miles an hour, but in this case, they were restricted. The engineer and the conductor got notes to say, please restrict your speed to 35 or 40, be on the safe side here. And they received a message at Winslow Junction to slow down and to proceed with caution. It was near milepost 86 that, and this is west of Chatsworth, New Jersey, that the train hit one of these unfortunate washouts at about 4:37 p.m. What happened? Well, in about 500 feet of track just was destroyed. The 5-car consist behind number 820 uncoupled from 820 and literally just came to rest just behind it. So you have this locomotive up front and the consist behind, and just, big giant gap in between there. And like I said, there was 500 feet of track that was just utterly destroyed. And the news being what the news is, see, so this does not vary. Let this be a lesson to you folks watching, that the news doesn't always get it right. Sometimes they tend to just say things, and in this case they said hundreds of people were dead and hundreds were injured. well, that's not the case. There were only 49 ticketed passengers on that train that day. So sometimes you can have fake news even back then, 1939. So there were, again, 49 people on board. There were 32 passengers that were injured, 4 dining car attendants that were injured, and unfortunately the porter and one of the train service, probably the brakeman, was injured. And unfortunately, one of them later died, the chef, a man by the last name of Goldman, unfortunately died of his injuries later on. But the funny thing is, and it's funny, not funny in this case, was most of the injuries came from the wicker chairs, the royal blue ones that were in the Biela behind me, because they weren't bolted down, they just went whoop, and they went everywhere inside. And I'm sure head injuries and other injuries ensued. So there's a great photo of the Biela, and I'll flash it up on the screen for you. You can see it where it's, very tangentially placed to the track. So it had not gone completely awry, but it was definitely worse for wear, and it took some time for the maintenance of way crews and the wreck crew to come in there and put all this back together. So that is the Biela's little claim to fame. And again, it would go on, it would be redone and serve another few more years, 2 more years, until it got to 1941. And then in 1941, it would be painted into just their old green, it says Central Railroad of New Jersey on it. It would go back into the pool, and then it would be used all the way until the 70s, mid-70s, where it would become part of the Clinton Station Diner behind me. So I think it's rather fascinating. But why don't we get up close with Biela, and let's go around the exterior and take a look at some of the neat little things that make it what it is.
It's so hard to save your breath, but it's so easy to spend every single second. You know you'll never get it again. Bet your life on it, my friend. Sidewalk sounds just moving through the local saloon. Jack and Jameson, have you met my friend?
Okay, so I'm on the ground here with the Biela. Let's take a closer look and try to understand some of the mechanical features that the Biela has. All right, so this is one of the trucks. Now keep in mind, this is an all steel body, okay? And so this is very typical of just these steel cars, some that were retrofitted, receiving 2-axle trucks here. And if you got leaf springs and coil springs here, you're going to be in for a pretty comfy ride. So that's kind of neat to point out. Also, this has journal bearings on it, which we cannot get open, but that's okay. Which is funny that I see this, because everything I've read said that this actually had roller bearings on it. Now, again, as we know, stuff gets swapped out over time on railroads, and hard to say, but the CNJ did have a line in one of their magazines that touted this in 1929 as the best and first passenger train east of the Mississippi with roller bearings. So we can either take that for what it is or with a grain of salt. I'll leave that up to you. So again, this is pretty typical of a all-steel car for that time period. So let's continue down here, because we see some more things that we can address. Okay, so this is for your steam heating. And we know that because it says Vapor Heating Company right here. These guys are synonymous with all things steam heat on railroad cars. So that, you can trace those lines all the way through, which lead us to, this is where you'd hook up to ground power right here. So if this is sitting in a station, say Jersey City or Atlantic City, this is where you could plug into station power and be able to illuminate your lights inside or keep your air conditioning running when this car did have air conditioning. So something to keep in mind, this car was actually not built with air conditioning, but later it would be air conditioned when that came to be more of a thing in the late 30s, early 40s. So keep that in mind. So a lot of this has been retrofitted. Remember, anytime you look at something like this after the fact, a lot of things have been changed and modified. So it's not going to look exactly as this car did when it debuted as the Biela. in the Blue Comet contest in 1929. Because remember, this was a car of its own even before that, because in 1928, the Central Railroad of New Jersey's Elizabethport shops actually brought numerous cars, 16 to be exact, into the shops and retrofitted them to become what was known as the Blue Comet then. So they were trying to be a little bit cheap back then in terms of the passenger cars. They figured, well, kind of like Mount Clair to the B&O, it's cheaper if we actually just bring in existing cars and retrofit them on site, right? We don't have to put an order in with a big person like American Car Foundry or Pullman, Standard, or et cetera, and we can just do it all in-house, save a little bit of money. So let's keep moving. All right, so here's your battery boxes. You got a set of those over here. This bicycle is not period correct, but this is a reservoir for your air. You also have some more of your steam heating appliances in here. Lots of other good stuff. Let's keep moving here, because there's something that's kind of neat to point out over here on this truck. Now this we know is, maybe not exactly the original one, but we do know that it is the Central Railroad of New Jersey right here. So that is pretty neat to point out. Let's go, because this truck looks just like the other one. There's really no difference. Let's keep walking though, and let's take a look at the rear end here. There's some neat stuff to point out here. So typical passenger car coupler, just like you see on most heavyweight passenger cars. You have safety chains right here. You have your cut lever right here. That's this guy. Again, your steam heat line. This is the 90-degree apparatus for it, but it'll come down. It would come down and go across like that. Here is your train line, or for your air brakes, and the smaller one is for your signal line. And they both still have their angle cocks actually in place. That's kind of neat. I'll point out there's the coupler pocket, and let's go on the other side and see what we see. All right, I'm on the other side of the car here, and this is where it gets kind of neat. You get to see some neat stuff here. So here is your axle-driven generator. How do we know that? Well, let's get in a little bit closer here. And you can see this is where the drive shaft will come off. And they have obviously replaced this at some point, because the ring and pinion, if you will, is not on here. But yes, this was an axle-driven generator, most likely direct current or DC. And over here, moving forward, you have more air tanks. This bad boy is your brake valve. That is a UC or U brake valve. That's pretty heavy duty. So if you don't come to a stop, a UC or a U brake valve is going to stop you a lot sooner than what else is out there, like a D22 for passenger stuff. So that is what that is all about. Keep moving here. Here's the massive brake cylinder for this thing, 16 by 12. And again, when you have something like a UC that you need to stop on a dime almost, you need a brake cylinder that is going to do that job. Brake cylinder that's just as big to help move that way. And we'll keep moving here, and here's ground power again. These are your two ground powers, and your air conditioner unit is right over here. So you have your condensers, you have the compressors housed inside of there. I went poking around earlier, and all that good stuff. And then you have your chain here, which helps, obviously, as that releases, that creates slack, and then it pulls it in, and that applies the brakes and your pieces here. So pretty neat stuff here. And I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed. A lot of this stuff is still in place. Now, if you look on the top of this, you'll notice that there is a air conditioning unit now on the roof. That is not original. Of course, that is to heat and cool this car as it functions now as a permanent restaurant. So yeah, not period correct, but you don't want to sit inside and sweat or freeze. So gotta have one of those. But I gotta say, this has been really neat. I think we got a lot of good information looking at this thing. So again, if you come up here and visit the Biela and you see her as she is at the Clinton Station Diner, you have a little bit more understanding of what you're looking at. And if you poke around on the underside here, you'll see some pretty neat stuff just like we did. So now that we're inside of the Biela or the Blue Comet, let's talk about some of the things that are a little bit different than when it was built and put into service. So as we talked about on the outside of the car, this had everything inside was basically that beautiful deep royal blue or a Packard blue. But that is not the case anymore inside of here. And I'll turn you around and we'll get you a good look at what it is. Obviously, as we talked about, this is now a restaurant. And so there really is not too much blue going on here, but what we want to point out though is that it had originally walnut paneling. And let's turn around here and you can still see, now this is oak paneling here, so this was obviously replaced at some point. And unfortunately the royal blue Spanish Pentacote, I believe is how you say it, window shades are not here, but the original mechanisms are. If we look here, these are the original window mechanisms that as you squeeze, they go up and down, like so. And so, again, it's hard to tell what is original in here. This definitely looks somewhat original, but again, it's hard to tell because things have been changed so many times. And again, it came out of service in the 60s. We got to remember that. It came out of service in the 60s and became the Clinton Station Diner. I believe it's in the mid 70s, and then so it's been here ever since. So obviously things like this have been changed. Like this is an actual like door frame made for an actual door. This is not the observation door that would have been here. It would have been very different. It would have been steel. And there's other things here that are just again not exactly as it was the Biela on the Blue Comet, but it really serves its function well as what we see it now. In terms of a diner. So it's kind of neat. And unfortunately, you don't see the wicker chairs are not here anymore. But you do get to sit in some of these pretty comfortable seats, I have to tell you. And of course, the royal blue carpeting is not here. They have to do that. But again, this place has to function as a restaurant now. But it's still pretty neat. And when you come in here, you see some really good signs of life that they've kept it alive as it is. There's wonderful photos of the Blue Comet streaking across the New Jersey countryside as you walk through, and it's just a really nice atmosphere to come in here, and you get a great view of 78, and you can hear 78 in the traffic on there. So that's some pretty neat things to kind of point out. Again, it's a bit of a bummer. Yes, remember this is not a museum piece. This is now a restaurant. So, but the fact that it's still here after all these years is pretty amazing. So again, come and check this place out.
Talking from the moon since right about noon. Well, I burn a tent on these so-called friends. Well, I know where they go when the light gets dim. Just speaking in codes to the tenders we all owe a whole lot, but we just don't know what every single second. You know you'll never get it up again.
So now that we've talked about both the interior and the exterior, why don't we talk about what makes this car function today as what it is, which is a restaurant. Oh, thanks, Allison. Can I just get one cup of coffee, please? Sure. Thank you. So I'm sitting inside the Clinton Station Diner, and I have to tell you, this is no paid promo. I got no money for coming here and doing this, but I got to tell you, this is a phenomenal place. And we have people like Allison that serve you and wait on you. You really are you are not only just in the midst of a beautiful car, but some really great food and some great people that serve you. So please, if you're out in this area of New Jersey, come and pay a visit to the Clinton Station Diner, sit in the Biela, the Blue Comet car, and enjoy the food that's going to be in front of you. So we've reached a segment of the show that we do in most of these, called Cite Your Sources. Where does that come from? Well, as a former history major at the university that I attended, I had a wonderful, wonderful history professor by the name of Dr. Robert Rook, amongst many of the other history professors there. But Dr. Rook, I would sit in his office and make historical discussions, and he would always say to me, well, I would make some kind of historical argument, and he would say, well, that's great, Trevor, that's great, but you need to cite your sources. And I would say, okay, so I'm going to cite my sources. This episode, I have to say, I used a plethora of them. There was a good bit that went into this to kind of bring you all this information together. Talk about the Blue Comet and the Biela and this, that, and the other. So, By Rail to the Boardwalk by Richard M. Gladulich. I'm going to probably butcher this poor man's name. But heck of a good job on this one, Mr. Gladulich. This was really well. This was not just about the CNJ and the Blue Comet, but any railroad that went to the seashore got a shout out in this book. So this provided some great, we'll call it foundational information, the base layer here. So great and easy to read too. Great book, highly recommend. Used it for my notes. The Trail of the Blue Comet by Bear, Coxey, and Shop are the three authors. Those are the last names. And this one is literally the holy grail of all things Blue Comet. And I got a lot of good information out of this, a lot of good photos too of the Biela. So if you really want to learn about not just the Blue Comet, but the New Jersey Central, this is the book. This is the Holy Grail. You've reached Mecca if you own this book. Also, it's pretty expensive because it's not in print anymore. One that I really enjoyed, and that gave me a good list of the consist and numbers, and a great talk about what the interiors of the cars look like if you were riding them during the time period in which this train operated, of 1929 to 1941, would be Steam, Steel, and Limiteds by the legendary William Crattville. Saga of the Giant Varnish Era. This was an amazing book. Got some great information. It's only 2 pages on the Blue Comet, but man, are the details there. They're really there. Some other good stuff if you want to check this stuff out for yourself. Newsletters are always a good source, especially by historical societies. The West Jersey Rails Quarterly had a great write-up about the Blue Comet in there. This is one of my favorites, The Seashore's Finest Train, The Blue Comet by Joel Rosenblum and Tim Gallo. Great book, lots of amazing photos, blueprints, the works, thin, easy to read, fits in the old backpack. This is one of my favorites, and I use this quite a bit for this episode. Another good newsletter, speaking of newsletters from a few seconds ago, the NRHS Bulletin is just a great source all the way around. And they focus on different topics from month to month. But this one was really helpful. Volume 82, number 2, had a great write-up in there, and as you can see on the back, it's just everything Blue Comet. So really great information here. And, this is stuff that you really, when you go out to read stuff, whether you're doing YouTube or, writing a paper for something or just doing your own research, you just want to read something. Be decisive in your sources, And again, I'm not here to tell you where to buy any of these books, but please buy your books. Please don't steal them. And if you borrow one of these from somebody, like I borrowed this one from Lou R. Curry. And guess what, Lou? You're going to get this back because I don't like books that go boop, 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 and they walk away and they never come home. Homeless books hurt the heart. So make sure you get out there and you read some of these sources. Be decisive in your sources. I gotta say, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun for me. I really enjoyed making this episode for you. And I hope if you're in the Clinton, New Jersey area, you come out here and you pay this beautiful car a visit. Now, granted, it doesn't look like it did in 1929, but that's okay. You can still sit in here and have your favorite cup of coffee or get some really good food and just, enjoy some good food with some good friends or whatever it is that you do. But we also got a good understanding of what the history of the Blue Comet train set was. How did it come to be? And more importantly, how Biela behind me came to where it rests now in New Jersey. So this is Trevor from History on the Move, and get out there. I want you to read history, explore history, but most importantly, you make your own history. I'll see you on the next one.